Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining this Aramaic study class today. I pray that you are finding it a blessing and being able to navigate through the Aramaic a little better each and every day, each and every time you study it. And today I want to give you a few extra tips and just show you something that actually I discovered. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And again, sharing uh, what the screen looks like in what is called the dqudsha. And so many of you are familiar with this. I kind of worked through it once before just to um, help you get familiar with it, but I have to review it many times, so I don't mind doing it again and over until we can get familiar with it. So you'd go and click Pashita tool, comes up to a page like this. You have a pull down with this arrow, and you can put in the chapter and the book and chapter that you're looking for. Then what I normally do is check the boxes to use the UBS or which is simultaneous with the BFBS Pashita version. I click to include the vowel pointings. You can either use the Western or the Eastern. You will get some different vowel pointings that show up. I'm going to go ahead and click the Eastern just to have the vowel pointings that are consistent with what we've been studying. They're just a little bit clearer than, um, I'm sorry, I'm going to stay with the Western because the Eastern and the Western are slightly different. Then something that I've included here that is kind of interesting is you can include the different New Testament editions. And these are people who have learned Aramaic. Etheridge, Murdoch, Lamsa are all somewhat famous um, historians, scholars in the Aramaic, Syriac languages. Nitrafs, that's a Dutch translation. Um, but anyway, if you click the Etheridge, I kind of like his because it's a little, just a little different than what you would normally see. And so with that, we click load the verses. And then what it does is it puts the Aramaic um, with the vowel pointings, has the Hebrew with the vowel pointings beneath it. So assuming most of you are somewhat knowledgeable in Hebrew and can use that to aid in the pronunciation, but then right below it, it puts the English translation. In this case, it's from Etheridge's translation. So we're going to go down to um, verse 5 is what we have been studying with. I'm going to go ahead and if you hold your control key down and scroll over it, you can enlarge it. And I find that that's pretty helpful for me, especially when I'm sharing my screen to be able to show that and to also see the vowel pointings because they are a little tricky sometimes to look at the different little pointings. And so here, this is about as big as I can make it, but it's kind of handy here. So while I have compiled that PDF form that shows these together, it will take me forever to continue going through and creating a document like that. And as I come across this is what I use personally for verses that I don't want to create my own document for. And I may gravitate to this as time goes on. And as you learn to follow the language a little bit more, because then we can just jump around and cover many more scriptures, and we don't just have to stay following one chapter or one book. And of course, what you could see here, you begin to see the association of the Dalet in the Hebrew with the Dalet here. And what you also see is the flyout, that the minute you hold your cursor over those words, that they do fly out, give you a pronunciation, give you the root. And again, the pronunciation, we're not following what they have so closely. We're following it more from a more of a modern or reformed Jewish reading of the vowel pointings, just for because we don't want to get bogged down with that. We just want to get into the language, want to learn it, so that we can study it, not necessarily to speak it to anyone. But what's interesting here in today's study is something that really jumped out to me. We spent some time talking about the name of John Yuchanan. We took a look at the word baptized last week, but now the latter part of this has to do with the Spirit. In Hebrew, it'd be ruach dqudsha. Here we find in Aramaic, you can see the word, um, it's the ruach, but it's somewhat different. Here you see be ruach de kodosha, following it up here in the Aramaic, it's berucha de dqudsha. And so it's pronounced slightly different from the Hebrew, but what I saw very interesting is the way that he translated this. And because in Christendom, we always call it the Holy Spirit. That's pretty much the standard name you see everywhere. And what has happened in Christendom is it has become somewhat personified. In the Trinitarian doctrine, it will be an actual person, signified as an actual person, and given a personality, given capital letters as a title, basically becoming a name for what we see here as Ruach de Kedusha. And so this study is not to shake anyone's doctrine foundations, but just to try to see what do the scriptures really tell us? How do we shed the teachings of religiosity and history, and is there something that happened over the you know 2,000 years since the apostles and disciples walked the earth and Jesus walked the earth and they taught? How does our understanding of the Spirit mesh with the Judaism and their thought of the Spirit? Do they personify it? Do they give it a title or a name? Or how do they look at it as an essence from God, or a movement of God? And so when I came across this English translation and saw that he called it the Spirit of holiness, it was the first time I've ever seen that, and it really resonated with me. Those of you who know the Paradis way of studying, which is the Peshat, the Remez, the Deresh, then the Sod. This resonated as a remez with me, that it became clear that this was a spirit to bring us into holiness. It was the moving of God in a way that would cause us to become more like Him, to become holy. And suddenly it just became, it like the light bulbs went on, and it resonated with me. And I was so happy to see this. And so I wanted to share that little portion with you, that this in the spirit of holiness, in this way that he's translating it, every time you see it come up, it will not be personified. It will be as a directive that this is God's mission, and his purpose here is to provide his Spirit onto us to bring us into a state of holiness, to increase our ability to overcome sin and to move into a greater spirit of separation from the world and to be more like Him. And so I love this spirit of holiness, and thinking of what it's entailed, and I just resonates with me, and I'm not sure if it will with you. You may not agree, but it really spoke to me, and it was great to see this spelled out, in the verses here, especially in the Aramaic. Again, it's nothing's capitalized in the Hebrew or Aramaic languages, and the word for rucha or ruach in Hebrew is just connotated with the wind. It's again, I believe there's things that we will yet have to learn about how God's Spirit, the nature of it, and why it's so closely identified with the wind and the breath. And there are some that even go so far as to say that God's Spirit is really the air that we breathe. They look at the tetragrammaton, the Yud He Vav He, known as Yahweh to many people, but it's spoken without using your lips or your teeth. It is a um, breath spoken word. And so you actually make the sound of breathing as you pronounce, um, Yehovah or Yahweh, however you desire to pronounce it. But all of those letters are done with your breath. You don't use your lips. You don't use the roof of your mouth with your tongue. It's all a breath sound. And there are many who will run with that and say that, that like the scripture says, in him we live and move and have our being, that maybe there's more to this connection of God's Spirit and the air and the wind than what we really know how to identify yet. And so we have a lot to learn. I'm just praying that God will continue to illuminate my understanding as I pray for yours also, that as we study the scriptures, we can just learn more and more about Him, who He is, His nature, and have that nature and that desire, that passion formulated in us so that we would desire to please Him and allow His Spirit to create a greater realm of holiness within us. So I hope you enjoyed that study today. Again, maybe this little tip on using the Peshitta in the Dukrana will help you to venture out and putting this parallel like this. And if you need any help, please reach out to me. I just love to help you learn these things and study. Also on the side of this, you see the different dictionaries that are in here too. But what you will find is many of them, like I like the Payne Smith is a nice dictionary, but it will have all of the Christian influence. We need to, if you don't want that, then you have to look at the Marcus Yastros because he is a Hebrew scholar. And took all of his information from non-biblical literature, the Talmud, the Gemara, other topics, to where they're written about the scriptures and they use the similar words, but in somewhat different realms, so that we can gain just a little bit different understanding, not being just restricted to the scriptures as we know them. And so we get a understanding of the words from that time period in just a little bit deeper way. And of course, you can go to Hirsch and do some etymological dissection of these words and gain more understanding. And I encourage you to do that with this word ruach or rucha, and just see how God's Spirit talks to you as it brings you into this realm of greater holiness. So God bless you. Thank you so much for being a part of this class today. And I just pray that God will continually help you to fulfill the Vahavta in your life, which is to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. God bless you and have a good day.